Hello everyone, welcome to the Wellbeing Pod. I am Alina and have with me today Devisha. And today we are going to talk about relationships. And to guide us through this, we have Dr. Derrel Higgins to answer our question. So I leave the floor to Dr. Derrel to introduce himself.
So my name is Darrell Higgins. I did my undergraduate work at Arizona State University in Arizona in the U.S. and basically did a degree in family studies, but then went on and got my master's and doctorate in marriage and family therapy. After that, I worked doing clinical work, meaning seeing clients, doing group therapy, seeing couples and families. For a handful of years, and then started teaching and was doing private practice on the side. So my training is in working with marriages and families and really any relationship. So as a marriage and family therapist, that's what my licensure is, marriage and family therapy. That's that. I love relationships. That's something I've worked with for many years.
That's an impressive career path for sure. And then definitely something I think we need a bit more guidance on these days.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So I know that relationships are a complex dance, sometimes beautiful and can be messy as well. And I know our audience today might know this term, the term red flag. So nowadays, people, especially young adults and even adolescents, use psychological terms without even knowing the real meaning of it. So, how would you go about describing what a red flag is?
That's a great question. I think that all of us, as we've been in different relationships, could look back and think, I should have noticed this, or there was this warning sign, or my family didn't like this person, or they were rude to me, and I just kind of brushed it off, and it ended up being something that's how they began treating me all the time. So to me, a red flag is just any kind of warning sign. I think this is the key, though. All of us are imperfect, so I think maybe we all have a little bit of red flags. The real red flag, though, is when someone has some sort of trait that's really unhelpful, maybe even hurtful, but they're not willing to change that. That's the key. They're not willing to change that. So if their partner says, "Hey, that really hurt my feelings," and they're like, "You're too sensitive," that's a little more of a red flag than someone, who says, "That really hurt my feelings," and they say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't think that," and they learn how to not do that. So it's a great question about red flags. Pay attention. I think one of the great barometers of any relationship is when your family and your friends who know you very well meet this person. They don't all have to love this person also. And sometimes you may come from a family where you feel like your family's unhealthy, and so maybe you don't trust their judgment. But oftentimes when our best friends are giving us messages like, I think this person's not a very good person with you, that's not necessarily a red flag, but I would definitely pay attention to that and notice that. I think also if someone mistreats you in any way, if they use humor at your expense, they say something rude, they insult you, and then when you bring it up to them, they say, "Oh, I was just kidding. Like, can't you take a joke?" Or, things like that, and they're brushing it off. Those are red flags. I think also if they mistreat other people. Right now, like while you're dating someone, they're treating you very well. But actually what's most predictive is how they treat all people. So if they're wonderful to you, but then they're rude to, you go to a restaurant and they're rude to the person serving, they're rude to, someone on the street, they're rude to a stranger, at some point they're probably going to treat you like that. And so I guess I would put it in this way: don't date mean people. Stay away from mean people. They're no good. Until they can become nice, and then you can date them, but don't date mean people, and don't ever date someone's potential. Date who they are. It's an as is, like how someone is right now that's who you're dating and potentially maybe even going into a long-term relationship with. And so all people have great potential. But make sure you're dating them for who they are and how they behave now.
Yeah. Thank you for this amazing question. But like from we gathered is like sometimes university can be a bit hectic. So while trying to, university by time of exploration, independence, and when you get into a relationship, sometimes it's difficult to maintain genuine feeling and interest in the long-term relationship. So how to maintain genuine feelings and interest in the long-term relationship?
So just how do you keep in that relationship? How do you keep
Yeah.
those feelings? So I think one of the things to be careful of is there's a myth that exists in the world, and that is that when I fall in love with someone, I'm just going to be in love and feel in love with them. And in fact, some people, sadly, they get married and they feel so in love, and then one day they say, I fell out of love. I don't love this person anymore. And every relationship goes through ups and downs. Every relationship. That's very normal. I like comparing it to a relationship with my children. I love my children. I am committed to my children. But there's some days I don't like my children. Right? There's some days when my children do things that I'm like, I'm really frustrated, maybe,
Yeah.
but it doesn't change the amount of love I have for them. I'm still committed to them and love them. And I think in a long-term relationship, even in a dating relationship, but especially in a marital relationship, it's really more about the commitment. And if someone starts losing those feelings, usually what's happened is they have stopped doing the things they used to do. When you're early in your dating, you talk to them all the time. You go do fun things together. You may, go to the beach or enjoy a hike or whatever. And then usually we get busy with life and we stop doing fun things. We stop, talking to our partner, the person who's most important to us. And then we wonder why those feelings kind of disappear. And that's why most couples, the thing that's so great, this is what I love about being a marriage therapist, actually. If they've ever been to that place, meaning if they've ever been in love, I can get them back there. They've been there. They know what it looks like. And so we just have to, part of it is just reminding them, like, tell me about your relationship and what you used to do then. And they talk, they both smile and start going, oh, you know what? We would go do this and we would go dancing, or we would, really enjoy time together. And I help them understand that if you start doing that again, those feelings are going to come back. And that the feelings are temporary. It's our commitment that really brings us through the times when those feelings take dips. And that's very normal to have. In fact, there's a research study that looked at couples across time, married couples specifically, and it basically, the marital satisfaction is really high in the early years, and then it dips, and then it comes back up. And that's a normal trend for all couples. So it's when they're newlyweds, it's high, and then it starts dipping. It doesn't mean they're dissatisfied, but what happens when the birth of the first child happens, marital satisfaction starts to decrease. And that's a normal thing, because what happens is they're putting all their time and effort to being parents. And frankly, a lot of times they start neglecting their marriage relationship. They maybe don't go on dates anymore. They're tired. They don't get enough sleep. They're taking care of children. That dip at the lowest part, that's when they have teenage children. And then as the children launch, it comes back up. And so one of the most important things couples can do is during those years, they protect their marriage relationship. They make sure they continue to go on dates. They make sure they stay a husband and wife versus a mother and father. So that those roles are very important, but that they keep a priority on the relationship. So I'd say the same for college students as they're dating. If it's an important relationship to you, make it a priority. Make it don't think that well, if I love this person, we're just gonna find time. No, you got to plan it. You got to plan those relationships, and that's okay. That's okay to say, hey, let's make sure we go on a date night every week. Let's make sure that we're doing something that's for us as a couple, and it's okay to hang out too. That's fine, but have some times when you're formally doing things and doing things as a couple. I think that would be my advice is give make the relationship a priority, and then it will feel like a priority and it will be valuable.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of, we heard this a lot, that relationships are hard work. So this is it, right? Like we should never stop making efforts when it comes to this, like not taking things for granted as well.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Mhm. Yeah. And we do have a little scenario-based question for you. The name mentioned or pseudonym. So imagine Sarah and Ryan, two university students crazy about each other. So lately, Sarah has noticed Ryan is getting a little fidgety whenever she talks to her friend Abhishek from her class. Meanwhile, Ryan can't help but feel a pang every time Sarah gets complimented by her new attractive research assistant. Um, Jealousy and possessiveness can creep in any relationship, but how can couples navigate these feelings in a healthy way?
That is such a great question. I think jealousy is such a normal part of relationships.
Mhm.
The thing that's really important to understand is that all the different emotions that we have in our relationships, we have some emotions that are primary and some that are secondary. And let me give you an example of that. When my wife and I were dating, this is many years ago. One day, and we'd been dating for quite a few months. One day she said, we were talking about birthdays, and I was saying my brother's birthday was, so I have a brother who has a birthday the same day as her, and a brother who has a birthday the next day. I have 7 brothers. So anyway, and then my wife looks at me at that time, of course, the woman I'm dating, and she says, "When's my birthday?" And I was like, I knew it was either this day or this day. And I was like, and she was not very happy with me. She was angry. But that anger is a secondary emotion, right? Underneath that anger, she was hurt. She was hurt that I didn't know her birthday. I didn't know something really important about her that was very basic. And so the most important thing we can do is look at those underlying emotions. So when someone's jealous, I mean, the good sign about that, they care. The bad sign about that is sometimes we can let our jealousy really, really taint our relationship. And uh, probably the advice I would give, especially, is if someone's feeling a lot of jealousy, and if that jealousy has gone across all their relationships, they may tend to just be a very jealous person, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing, but they need to make sure that they're paying attention to, well, what is it why am I feeling so threatened? Why am I feeling threatened? It's normal to feel threatened. That's a normal thing. There's actually a lot of research that's been done on jealousy. Some really interesting research showed that uh, men tend to be jealous of other men with deeper voices. Women tend to be jealous of other women who have more feminine voices, and if they look more feminine. And
Interesting.
exactly, your example of someone having a research assistant, basically, so like if my wife had a research assistant, she teaches over in psychology, and that research assistant is a man and a very manly man. He has a deep voice and is tall and athletic looking. I'm going to be more jealous, according to that research. I'll be more jealous of that man than if he was more feminine or less masculine. And so there's some very normal parts of jealousy. There's some very normal parts of it. I think the biggest thing we can do is own our jealousy. So like if I'm feeling jealous, that's me feeling threatened. I have to own that. Like I'm feeling threatened. Okay. And helping our partner know how to take care of us. So if I'm feeling jealous, I might say to my partner, I'm feeling jealous, but I'm feeling kind of threatened. Like, is that relationship you know a threat to us? And and I think that if we are in a committed relationship and we really do trust the person, I think we have to just trust. Part of trust, inherent to trust, is risk. That when we trust someone, we are trusting them. I mean, I'm kind of handing my heart to my wife and saying, okay, I trust you. And I do absolutely trust my wife. She's just been so wonderful and trustworthy. But I can see in it, when you're in a dating relationship, it's a lot harder because you don't know if you can trust them. And especially if they have broken your trust before, then you're like, well, you have broken my trust. I'm feeling threatened, and maybe things didn't go so well last time, especially if there's been any sort of infidelity or someone cheating on another person. That's a really hard thing to recover that relationship. It's possible, but they really do have to rebuild that trust. So I think really understanding the feelings underneath it, and especially so my advice would be twofold. For the person having the jealousy, know that you're feeling threatened, and it's okay. It's okay to feel threatened. And there may be some situations where you're like, I should feel threatened, and that's okay to talk to your partner about that. Not blaming them, not investigating them, not interrogating them. If you feel like something's not going right in your relationship and you're going, I'm not trusting what's going on, it's okay to investigate that. It's way better to investigate it than to interrogate. Okay, so don't look at your partner and say, I think something's going on here, and you're going after them. That usually doesn't go very well. If you're going, what, I think something's going on here. Well, okay, keep your eyes open, look into that. That's okay to do that. But inherently, we do need to trust and allow that to happen. If they've broken our trust, that's different. We got to rebuild that trust. But on some level, we do have to trust and take risk. If we've had a previous relationship, even where we've gotten our heart broken, which is most of us have, and in fact, pretty much all of us have, we're gonna have a little bit of jealousy. We're gonna feel a little bit of threat. Now, for the person who is the partner of the person who's feeling jealous, the best thing you can do is reassure. That's the best thing you can do. Reassure them. Hey, you know what? I care about you. I'm here. I'm in this relationship. Reassure them. And hopefully that jealousy will subside, especially if there's nothing to it. If someone is, there's few people who really don't have control of their jealousy and let it really control their lives. It's really important for them to get that under control. That's kind of a rare situation. It's very normal for everybody to feel some jealousy. So I think it's okay to feel some jealousy, but don't let it grow. Don't let that grow. That can be really, really painful. Again, if you feel like something's not going right in the relationship, investigate that, figure that out. It's okay to trust those feelings. I think that's what I have to say about jealousy.
Good point. I guess for this one, being a young adult, learning to know themselves as well, it's going to be tricky to navigate. So those are good advice. Follow-up question. So we hear a lot about love languages, like since the past few years. So we kind of have this idea that we communicate in a certain way. And my question is, can a relationship thrive if partners have different love languages?
So my short answer to that is yes, absolutely. So Gary Chapman is the one who developed this idea of love languages, and I think he's actually like a pastor. I hope I'm not thinking this wrong. I think he's met with couples for many, many years, and he noticed that individuals have this pattern of basically a way that they express love and the way that they feel love. I think what's so interesting about love languages, and I love love languages, I think that that's a very helpful idea. It makes sense to me. I have been married for over 25 years, and absolutely, my wife and I have different love languages. Just absolutely. We were raised in different families. My mother, who I adore, is a gift giver, right? She always has a little gift for you. That's her way of showing love. And I now see that's an important thing for her. And there was a time when I felt like, oh, Mom, you don't need to give me anything. And now I've realized, no, like receive that gift, thank her for it. Because that really is her love language. And I've also learned, okay, that's my mother's love language. I give her gifts. In fact, this last Christmas, it was so fun. I signed her up for this thing where she gets a little piece of jewelry every month. And it's been the most fun gift I think I've ever given her, because it's like, it gives her that gift each month. And she told me, of like a month ago, oh, that's just been so fun, to open up this package each month, this is just a tiny gift, each month. But that's been a wonderful thing. I think it's actually a gift to us to know that there are love languages. One of the funny things that happens is we tend to give whatever our love language is, no matter what someone else's love language is. So me being, I'm also someone who I'm kind of a gift. Mine is gifts, but mine's also like physical touch. But a lot of times early in my marriage, I would give my wife gifts, and her love language is not that. And so she would be like, well, okay, this is nice, and it just wasn't her love language. And I've learned her love language is more like service and things like that. If I notice something that she needs and I take care of it, she loves that. And it has taken me many years to understand that. And I used to default. So we all of us typically default to our love language. And the good part about that is we're trying to love, we're trying to do it. But maybe we just don't know. But back to your original question, can they thrive? Absolutely. And I think the most important thing is understanding what your partner's love language is. And some of that's just asking and being okay with, tempering your own feelings. Because, maybe I might feel sensitive. Like I give my wife a gift, like early on, I remember giving her a gift and she didn't really care that much. And I thought, I gave her this gift. She should be really happy about that. And once I realized that I was doing things that really weren't speaking to her, it wasn't a gift to her. What was a gift to her is when I remember once I gave her a really small gift, but it was something that really meant something. And then she was like, this is the best gift you've ever given me. And I thought, it has nothing to do with like how much money it is or anything like that. It was that I noticed something about her. I paid attention to who she was. And I think that all of us, of course, that's one of our, that's something that helps us, all of us feel value. But for her, the gifts of service are very important. So as you know that, you're light years ahead in your relationship if you know what your partner's love language is. Sometimes we don't know our own love language. And so, one of the things that is important for us to do in our own lives is know what are the things that I need, and then asking our partner to meet those needs. And so it might be physical touch. It might be, hey, I need you to hold me. I need to feel that physical touch. I need to, and there's a big difference between physical touch and sexual touch, right? Physical intimacy, meaning non-sexual physical intimacy. So someone holding you, someone like scratching your back, rubbing your back, or holding your hand, all these behaviors. And so many of us need those kind of things. It's important to tell your partner that, especially if that's not their love language, because they're not going to do that automatically. But if it's something important for you, then you just say to your partner, oh, you know what? I love it when you hold my hand, or I love it when you put your arm around me. I need that. Is that okay? There is very rare would any person be like, no, I'm not going to do that. Most partners are like, oh, that helps you feel loved. Absolutely. Thank you for letting me know that's helpful. Because in any relationship, it is a thrill when you finally figure out something that really does it for your partner. You're like, yes, I know how to take care of them now, better at least, because it's a process. It's a real process to understand how to take care of another person. And the myth is that if I love you, I'll know how to take care of you. That is not true. You can love someone and have no idea how to take care of them. And that's where talking comes in. You need to ask them, what do you need? What are the things I can do for you? And it's okay to have those conversations and get rid of that myth in our heads sometimes of, if I love you, I'll know how to do it. Or if they love me, they'll know. No, they won't know. They won't know unless you tell them. And so you have to help. You basically are helping to teach your partner how to take care of you. And that's a wonderful thing you can do in a relationship.
Yeah, totally agree. I think you're right saying that it's a gift to us, because if we actually get to know, people, it's not, I don't know if you agree with that, but I feel like love languages doesn't just apply to the romantic relationships, right? It could be like for
Absolutely.
family, for
Every
friendships.
relationship.
Exactly. So it's a gift for us to know how to make meaningful connections and be able to navigate those relationships as best as we can to get more, to receive more at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful. In fact, I think even in like business, you'll see that if
Mhm.
someone knows how to really show appreciation to their employees, a lot of times it's different for different
Yeah.
employees. And so it's important in every human relationship, it's
Yeah.
important. So I think that's a great point that you make.
Yeah. Okay, we have a question for this one. So my partner does not voice out his feelings during conflict situations. I express myself, but he shuts down. How can I better handle the situation?
So let me tell you about some really interesting research. So John Gottman was at the University of Washington, and this is a few decades ago. He's been there for years. I don't think he still teaches, but he has what's now called the Gottman Institute. But John Gottman did an interesting thing. When he looked at marriage relationships, he thought, we have all this that we're trying to help these couples and do marital therapy, but we haven't done enough research to know what really matters. So he started doing research on how couples interact, especially men and women in heterosexual marriages, right? He was looking at how men and women talk. He discovered some very interesting things. He did even one experiment where he was tracking their heart rate while they were having conflict. He noticed that women's heart rate can go higher and they can stay in the conversation. Men do what's called flooding. So when men get really upset, they flood, their emotions just, and then they check out, they disappear. They literally leave sometimes, and other times they just leave, mentally. They're gone, and they do what's called stonewalling.
Mhm.
So what you're describing of a man and a woman having conflict, and the woman staying in the conflict and saying, let's resolve this, and him dropping out of the conflict is part of that's actually a biological difference between men and women. Women also, their verbal ability increases as they get upset. Men's verbal ability decreases as they get upset. So they actually don't have the words like a woman would. So usually you get this pattern. It's called a pursue withdraw pattern. So the woman becomes the pursuer in the relationship and he becomes the withdrawer. And so that sometimes can flip, but very oftentimes it falls along those gender lines of the woman being a pursuer and the man being a withdrawer. So one of the things that's important to know is simply that difference that when men and women are having a conversation or especially in a relationship, and especially if it's something that's conflictual and they're getting upset, it's very good to bring that back down.
Mhm.
So it's okay to have timeouts. It's okay to say, I'm getting really upset right now. Is it okay if we, like bring it back down, especially for the man? He needs that. And I think for women, when they understand how that happens, because it can be very frustrating, like, oh, you just disappear. What are you doing? Like, let's keep in this. We got to resolve this, don't run away. That's a very common thing that happens. So one of the things that I would also suggest is that couples set up a time to talk about conflict. So one of the things I said earlier that I recommend for all couples to have a date night. Have a night each week that's dedicated to your relationship, and it preserves the fun of the relationship, that you actually do things together as a couple and you really enjoy that time together. don't talk about problems on the date night. Every couple has problems. That's not when you talk about the problem, because that will ruin date night, and it will make date night, if date night becomes like, let's say my wife and I were doing a date night and we start talking about our children, and every date night we talk about the problems we have with our children. Date night stops being fun. It's like date night now is just talking about problems. And so you preserve the fun, enjoy the time together as a couple. And then I actually recommend that couples have a different time during the week, that they have kind of I'm going to call it a business meeting. That's not a very great word for it, but a time when they talk about the relationship. How are we doing? Maybe it's a time when they're scheduling the week, and they're, it's sort of this time of figuring out, like, what are some things we need to make sure we're working on? But that's a great time to talk about conflict. Like, hey, the other day we were having this conversation and I don't think we really resolved it. Can we set up a time to do that? We need to be able to resolve that problem. That's the one thing couples do not like to do, right? It's not fun. It's not fun to resolve conflict. I do recommend, so John Gottman has a book, called The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Last. There's another book that was actually written quite a few years ago, by Howard Markman and Scott Stanley, and it's a book called Fighting for Your Marriage. The thing I love about that book is it really gives you a step-by-step way of talking through problems, and staying engaged in that. So those are some things that I think are important. I think it's okay if there's, so back to your original question, if your partner's really upset, it's okay to let that come back down. Like, oh, hey, let's take a break. Let's get that to calm down, and let's come back to it. When we're very upset, rarely do we say something that's helpful to the relationship. Men and women, but especially men, because our verbal ability, the more we get upset, that verbal ability is just not as good. And for women, it's better. So they're able to really engage in that conversation more. And the men are not able to do that. I mean, it's just a physiological difference between men and women. So I think knowing that difference between men and women, setting up a time to talk about problems, and knowing that every relationship has problems, and really even going back to, that idea of every relationship, not just romantic relationships, every relationship, we have to talk through things. We have to iron out problems, even with our siblings, even with our parents, even with our best friends. And those are the relationships it's worth it to do that. And it takes some effort to say, I care about you. I want us to have a good relationship. Maybe it's even just a friendship. I want us to have a great friendship. I was upset by this, or let's figure this problem out that we're having. And when you feel like someone's committed to it, it makes it much easier to be able to deal with those hard things.
Yeah, true. It's easier when we both have the same goal of, making
absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Great question.
Okay. This one is also kind of something that a lot of people struggle with. How do I maintain healthy boundaries with my partner?
Healthy boundaries, such a good question. So I'll say a couple things on this one. Oftentimes women have more issues with boundaries. And let me tell you why that is. Because women tend to be nurturers and caretakers. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a wonderful thing. And there are many men who are also. That's not necessarily a man-woman thing. I teach, at a university in home and family. Many of my students are these kind of people who, excuse me, want to work with people. They want to help. They're the helpers of the world. And that's a wonderful thing. They also tend to be students who don't have very good boundaries. Because when we're a helper, and someone who's really nurturing, oftentimes we're just looking for how to help, and we're okay with sacrificing our own, what's going on in our lives for someone else, because that's how much of a helper we are. Women are very selfless in general. I see that in their parenting as mothers. I see that in the relationships as I've met with men and women. across the years, women have an amazing ability to care for other people. It's just absolutely beautiful to watch. Men also can have that, and I think they really can actually nurture that and be a better nurturer themselves. But one of the principles that I think is terribly important in a relationship. Years ago, I was sitting in a class in college, in university, and my teacher said this: "It is your responsibility to teach others how to treat you." And when I first heard that, I thought, no, people should be nice to each other. That I should expect that people will be kind. The longer I've been alive, the more I love that saying. It is your responsibility to teach others how to treat you. We do it in very subtle ways in our relationships. If I'm in a dating relationship and maybe that woman says something rude to me, or she swears at me, she calls me a name, and if I don't say anything about that, I've taught her something. I've basically said to her, even though I didn't say anything, I've let her know that's okay to talk to me that way. I've taught her how to treat me. So for good and for bad, we do that all the time. And so it's very important for us, when our partner has done something that's offensive or that we felt like is unacceptable, that we say something about it. Hey, I don't let people talk to me that way. I don't let people call me names. I don't let people say things like that to me. And that's okay. You need to know what you need, and it's okay to ask your partner for those things. That is what a relationship is, that you know your basic needs and you're asking that person to meet those needs. That's the basic premise of every relationship, including non-romantic relationships, right? Within certain bounds, depending on what those relationships are. So you really do. So back to the idea of boundaries, it's very important for us to let our partner know what's okay and what's not okay. And that's fine. Whatever that is, that's who you are. And if they're going to be in a relationship with you, they need to know that that's how to take care of you. And again, I think in my clinical work, I've seen that much more with women because of that nurturing aspect of them. They sort of tend to be willing to preserve the relationship, even at the cost of themselves. And so I think women especially have to be mindful of really letting their partner know that that's not okay. You know, I won't do that. I'm not going to allow you to do that, or things like that, or maybe suggesting this is what I want you to do. If you want to be in a relationship with me, this is how you take care of me. And I think those are all very, very good, very healthy ways to be in a relationship.
I guess a lot of successful relationships will be based on how much you know yourself and work on yourself first, and develop, that love maybe or care you have for you. And then it's easier to know what you expect, not necessarily expect, but how you would like to be treated, I guess. Or
I really love that idea, because I really believe that it's very important. How can I teach my wife how to take care of me if I don't know how to take care of me?
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying is very, very accurate, that we do need to reflect on what are my needs as an individual? What are the things that are important to me? What are ways I need someone to talk to me and care for me and nurture me? And then teach our partner that. But if we don't know what it is, and there's been many times I've sat with a client. I remember one woman I worked with years ago, and she was a wonderful wife and mother and was dedicated to her family, but she was actually really struggling with depression. And I said, "What makes you happy?" And she sat there and thought, and she said, I don't know. And I thought, well, there's the problem. That's the problem right there. She didn't know what made her happy. she just was so invested in being a wife and mother, and that's wonderful, but it was at the expense completely of herself, and she had given and given and given until that she felt like there was nothing left. And so we practiced a thing called self-nurturance. I wanted her to self-nurture. There's a difference between selfishness, like, oh, well, I'm all about me and I'm most important. No, self-nurturance is like, you know what? I know I need sleep. I know I need to eat. I know I need to take care of my body. I need to have certain things in my life. That's self-nurturance, understanding how I care for myself, and then I can teach someone else how to care for me. And so that idea of self-nurturance, I think, is very important and will be a great blessing to your relationship, any relationship, including non-romantic relationships. It'll be a blessing for those too.
Definitely. It's like the relationship with you is a template for the other one. So, yeah.
Great. Such a great analogy.
Yeah. Okay. Back to Alina.
We do have one last question for you today, which is how to move on from a long-term relationship after school.
So breakups are hard. And one thing to understand is that all of us are going to get our heart broken. And the whole idea of dating and moving through relationships can be difficult. I hate getting my heart broken. It's terrible. I reflect back on when I was in school and dated different girls, and it's very difficult to be rejected. There's nobody on this earth who likes being rejected. It's a terrible feeling. But I also think there's so much value in learning from your relationships. I think one of the most important things we can do is focus on healing when we've gone through a relationship and that relationship has broken up, that it's dissolved. That an unhelpful thing to do is to jump into the next relationship because we haven't resolved that hurt, and a lot of times we're just kind of replacing. And instead of replacing, focus on healing and think of okay, what can I learn? What were some aspects of that partner that I want in a partner for life? Because you were with that person for a reason. Even if that broke up, there was parts of that person that you really enjoyed and liked. And there's a big difference also if we're the one who ended the relationship or if the other person ended the relationship. It's harder for the person who didn't end the relationship because a lot of times they're like, I didn't want to end the relationship. I would continue in the relationship. So there's more healing that needs to happen there. So it's important to do that, though. An interesting thing I learned when I did my dissertation, so when I worked on my doctorate degree, my PhD, I worked with couples who had been in a previous marriage, got divorced, and then one of those people got married again. And so what I was trying to find is what are the things that help a couple in what I would call a remarriage, a second marriage, not to that same person, but a different person, but a second marriage. What are areas that can be tricky for them, that they need to be cautious and work through? One of the things I discovered is that love and hate are not opposites. Love and hate are right next to each other. So if I hate someone, that means they matter to me. Mm-hmm. If I don't have any feelings for someone, that's the opposite. So love and apathy are the opposites, an absence of feelings. And so it's important, instead of like, if we have feelings of hate for someone, it's really important actually to resolve that, because those feelings will actually impair our next relationship. It actually gets in the way of us connecting to another person, because I'm still connected. I'm just connected in a negative way instead of a positive way. And so it's good to resolve those feelings and to be able to look at how can I heal from this relationship and be ready for a next relationship and learn. What could I learn from that relationship? Are there things that I could have done differently and been a better partner? What are some of the traits that other person had that I want to have in a long-term partner? And pay attention to those things. And maybe even were there any red flags as we talked about those warning signs? What are the things I might have disregarded or ignored instead of paying attention to? All those things will help us move into the next relationship in a more successful way. And know that it's okay that some of that healing is going to happen in the next relationship, because it's not until we reach that depth, the next relationship, we reach the depth of the previous relationship, that some of that stuff's going to heal, if that makes sense.
We'll only probably know when we are faced to it. You know, you heal when you're able to practice maybe the things that you've learned during the healing process in the new relationship.
Yes. Very true. So until you reach that, like where I'm really close again to someone, and now it's going to be tender because, you know, last time I was close to someone, I got hurt. And so it's okay and very normal to have those feelings when you move into a next relationship. I think that the most important thing you can do is pay attention to your emotions. Don't give in to your emotions. Don't live through your emotions, but pay attention to them. They're very important signals that our self is sending us. So if I, you know, have a relationship that breaks up and I'm feeling really hurt, well, it's okay to pay attention to that. Like, why am I feeling so hurt? And try and understand that. Talk to friends about that. Try and resolve that, and know that some of it is just healing. Oftentimes we think that our emotional injuries just somehow heal very quickly. But if you compared a good comparison is compare whatever the emotional injury is to a physical injury. So I remember once I had this woman I was working with, and she had been through divorce, and it was just, she had been through some really tough things. And I said, and she said, I should be over this. That's what she kept saying about it. I should be over this. Why am I wasting my time with this? I should be over this. And she was kind of angry at herself. And I said, okay, I want you to think about that emotional injury as a physical injury. Give me a physical injury that would be at that level of how big that emotional injury was. And she said, this is how big it was. She said, it is like getting hit by a truck, like a cement truck, just. And I said, okay, let's go with that. If you really got hit by a cement truck, tell me what would have happened to your body. And she said, well, I would have broken a lot of bones. I would have been in the hospital. I said, how long would you have been in the hospital? She said, oh, I mean, probably for months. I said, yeah, probably for months. And then you would probably have to do physical therapy. You would probably have to, you know, you wouldn't be back to your normal self for a long time. And she finally started realizing, oh, I'm expecting emotionally just to be over it. When really that healing process, you have to let it take some time. The beautiful thing about who we are as human beings, we are built to heal. If I got a cut on my arm, I would maybe go to the doctor if it was severe enough, but the doctor doesn't heal it. The doctor cleans it. The doctor makes sure that there's nothing in the way of the healing to happen. And then my body heals it. I inherently have the ability to heal. We have the ability to heal mentally. We have the ability to heal physically. We have the ability to heal emotionally. And it's a beautiful thing. That's part of who we are as a human being. But sometimes we really need to give it some time. And sometimes we need to get rid of the stuff that's getting in the way of that. Sometimes it's a belief. Sometimes it's, you know, I'm not worthy of love. It's like, no, you are worthy of love. So that's when I'm saying talk to other people, or, you know, if you're really stuck, it's okay to talk to a professional even, or talk to someone who is a trusted advisor or counselor, or even a religious leader, you know, someone from the outside who can help encourage you and maybe challenge some of those negative things that you're stuck in. But but the main idea is focusing on healing, not of replacing. So heal from that relationship, learn from that relationship, and let it be something that actually blesses you instead of holds you back.
I think that's a beautiful way to end this session. And I don't think we covered everything about it, but I don't think
we could
if
probably talk for a long time, right, about
I
all
don't
these
think
things.
45 minutes would have been enough, or even more than that, like even hours wouldn't cover, you know, the complexity of what relationships are and where, you know, the work begins and where it actually ends. But that session was really, you know, eye-opening. I was connected to you the whole time, learning at the same time, and refreshing probably of what's important to bear in mind when whatever types of relationships we are in. I think it's important to reflect a lot on what relationships, like how relationships hold values in our life and what it means to us. So thank you so much, Dr. Derrel, to have been here with us today. I'm sure our listeners will love hearing from you, and hope to collaborate with you in the future as well. Again,
Absolutely. Anytime. I
thank
would
you.
love to visit with you again.
Any last words of wisdom from you?
You know what? Two things I want to say. One is I love Mauritius and the people of Mauritius. You are absolutely wonderful. I miss being there so bad because even though it's a beautiful little island, that is actually not the beauty of it. It's the people that are there are just so great and amazing. So just love Mauritius so much. But the second thing I'd leave you with is relationships are worth it. It's so interesting. When you were wrapping up, it reminded me of a study that was done for decades at Harvard University, and they followed these men specifically. This was a study that started, I think, in the 1930s. They follow these men all the way through their lives, and they looked at what they considered success and what at the end of their life what really mattered. And what they found was relationships. Relationships mattered. It didn't matter where they worked. It didn't matter how much money they made. It didn't matter. All that stuff didn't matter. It didn't matter where they lived. What mattered was the relationships, the people that were close to their heart. And so even though it's hard, relationships are hard. Sometimes we're tired. Sometimes we get really tired in a relationship and we think, is this worth it? It is. Relationships are what life's all about. It's the beautiful part of life. It's the difficult part of life. That's where we have our joy, and that's where we have our tears, is in our relationships. And so it's worth it. And so keep at it. Know that you can do it. Even if you came from a family environment that didn't have great relationships, you can do that. You can do it. And you can find even better relationships than you were taught. And that's a wonderful thing. So don't give up and have hope and have joy in those relationships. And that is such a beautiful part of life. So
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for those
Thank
positive
you.
and encouraging. I feel inspired, you know, to give people
Yes.
chances.